All right. Everyone online, thank you for attending. And most people are a little bit late, so I just have some announcements beforehand. I am Janelle McCoy with the Mid-Atlantic Geospatial Users Group, and I'd like to welcome you to the webinar entitled Managing the Street Excavation Permitting Process in the Right-of-Way. Thank you for being with us today. Short announcements, as I said, before we get started. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and will be available at the magtug.wordpress.com website shortly after today's live broadcast. Please visit our website for more geospatial transportation goodness in March with our upcoming sister events. Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, or DVRPC, has the Information Resource Exchange Group, or IREG, in Philadelphia on March 8th. The New Jersey Geospatial Forum will be held in New Jersey on March 16th, and the Southeast PA GIS Users Group will be held in Malvern, PA on March 24th. Please mark your calendars for the Transaction Conference on April 4th through the 6th in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This is the annual New Jersey Transportation Conference and Expo, and it will play sessions as I just lost that page. How the digital revolution is reshaping transportation, tech tools for planning, fostering innovation in transportation, and of course, everything on everybody's mind, smart highways and infrastructure. For those lucky enough to have a travel budget, don't forget April 10th through the 13th is the American Association of State Highway Transportation Officials, or AASHTO. The GIS for Transportation Symposium would be held in Phoenix, Arizona. It's the country's premier gathering of geospatial transportation professionals. So if you get a chance, it's something definitely not to miss. Now on to the webinar, our webinar today. We ask that you'd participate in today's webinar by typing questions that spring to mind throughout the webinar into the Q&A box at the bottom of the WebEx window. I'll read back your questions at the end of the webinar so that everyone has the opportunity to hear the answers from our presenter. Now, it is my pleasure to introduce our presenter, Bob Pliszka. He is the Regional Director for JMT Technology Group. Bob works with clients to deliver business-critical GIS and software application solutions. He has 17 years of experience and holds a Master's of Science in Geographic Information Systems, is Geographic Information Systems Professional, or GIS-T, as well as a Project Management Professional, or PMP. Johnson, Merriam & Thompson, Inc., also known as JMT, is a progressive geospatial and information technology service provider specializing in transportation application solutions, and is proud to call the Mid-Atlantic its home. We also wish to thank JMT for the use of its WebEx account today. Bob will be walking us through the Philadelphia Streets Department's web-based Guaranteed Pavement Information System, or GPIS, which connects departments and organizations in and outside of the city. It has an advanced GIS mapping component which provides users with the ability to identify project locations, collaborate with existing city right-of-way project owners, and manage project conflicts. Bob, the virtual floor is yours.
Well, and thanks everyone for sitting in on the webinar today. As I mentioned, I'm going to talk about a project that we have helped with Philadelphia, and the system is known as the Guaranteed Pavement Information System, they call it GPIS. We talk about writing things here. Janelle mentioned that, again, my name is Pliszka. I'm the regional director for GIS-T. I'm located right here in Philadelphia, not away from the municipal service building, which is the stream design for this application is actually posted. So, quick into what we were tasked to do here. To give you some background on the GPIS system, it's a system set up and implemented in 2000, and at the time,
sorry, Bob, you're going to have to speak up a little bit louder. It is a bit mushy, and I'm getting people talking. So please talk a little bit louder.
Sure. Is that better?
Yeah, I'm getting thumbs up now.
Okay. So again, the city. So to start over again, some background project. GIS was a system built in 2000, the year 2000. Not this base screenshot you can see there. You can see that was cutting edge technology. But the core reason it was set up was to support the process of utilities such as your PICOs, your Verizon, internal utility city such as department to some centralized location, actually map out their potential street excavation work, for that work, for utilities in the right way, and for to collaborate with those utilities. So basic purposes, and then there's some other additional things like managing events that occur on a regular basis, so they can be managed how they tie into the street excavation work in the city. So basics for the system being put together, being about. So moving to line. The goal for the project, which was essentially 2015, 2016, right of the system in a modern web-based system that had to become a core functionality of the original GIS system. It was, support for multiple user types, supporting entry and editing, product being detailed information about what a utility or a street wants to do within the street right away in the city limits. Managing those recurring events such as the Broad Street Run, the Philadelphia Marathon, and how they impact as to when and where they can cut up in the street to get up their line. Issuing, this is a permitting system. At the end of the day, that's what everyone that's in here on the external side do. Go in there and excavate right away. And so on a clarity issue, hopefully I can work through that. But pretty much I think set the best I can. So hopefully you can hear. I will do my best to keep it clear as I'm talking through this. Some other things you need to do is utility review and approval, and essentially what that means is if I'm a utility in the right and going to excavate the street, obviously there's other utilities that may have lines in the area. So anytime excavation is all impacted utilities have to be notified process, and that's all part of that permitting process. Resolution, kind of what it sounds like. Give volume of utilities within the city and their approximate, really being close in location. There's always a bit of conflict. Meaning someone wants to try to get at their line on the same days on the same stretch of road. So they make sure there's a mechanism in there for those to be resolved within the system before a permit could be issued. And then your other standard tools that come along with the system: generation, a certain amount of standard reports about the number of outstanding permits, tools for managing use, and about my volume. I'm speaking pretty much as loud as I can, so bear with 1 second.
Welcome to WebEx. Enter attendee ID number followed by...
This is also a good time if you have general questions about what you think he's going to cover, go ahead and type them in so that we can have a chance.
Back.
Okay, thank you.
Is it better?
Oh, that's much better, I think.
Okay,
Does everybody
great.
else think so?
Great. I was on a headset, and I've actually turned it dialed in via conference call, so hopefully this goes a little bit smoother and everyone can hear me. So what I'm talking about here was how this new system had to retain all the core functionality. That's what's actually getting projects in, while scheduling conflicts with other utilities or people within the city, getting required reports, managing users within the system, of course, searching for press within the system. So with that in mind, new improvements that need to come, I guess, be recognized with the new system as well. So foremost, they wanted a modern UI, and they wanted this to be more of a pure web-based application. The original deployment was a Citrix-based deployment, so it had the desktop feel to it. In the deployment, the city itself, a lot of the different folks within the streets department perform a lot of actions within the system. And things such as actually resolving conflicts in the system by sitting there and clicking buttons to resolve conflicts, even though the two work it out amongst themselves. There was the desire to be able to support the upload of digital plan attachments, because they're pretty critical when others are reviewing the plans for excavation to give the okay to go ahead and do the digging. They've set up for certain agencies for direct integration with the system. Some new project classifications were added, which simply means what type of work is being done in the city. Is it a fiber optic line? Are you getting at a water line? Whatever the different project types might be. Implement a more workflow-based approach, so a bit more intuitive to users as they enter their object information. Navigation was an important piece because a lot of the companies hire consultants to do work. So they for them to maintain their and desire double privacy, but also allow consultants to enter, modify information on their behalf. And then validation and to maintain their integrity, administrative tools, and then some real more in-depth control over user permissions, meaning who can see what, who can do what in the system. These are all things that, in addition to the legacy functionality, need into this new system with GIS, one of the core components, and a lot of these different things. So let's talk about the GPIS. We wound up keeping this name, but essentially a new deployment, more modernized version with some new functionality. So quick overview of technology. You can see nothing out of the ordinary. ESRI ArcGIS server was the main driver behind the GIS piece of this. HTML5 JavaScript application with using the JavaScript API from ESRI are the main components here, and the back end was the SQL Server database. So specs, I touched on these a little bit in the previous slide, but I do these general buckets here, and that's kind of how I categorize the system now. Manage projects, it's not a project management system, but there's certain touch points along the way as you're entering a project lifecycle that you're entering information into GPIS. Resolve conflicts, or there's opportunities for collaboration, as I talked about before, between utilities, because they might get a permit for the same date in the same stretch of street, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. Utility request, which I'll go into a little bit further, which again, not want to work on the same date, but you may have a line that could be impacted by the date, so you need to okay the requester to go and cut the street around your line. Report and managing the recurrent events, I talked about those before. And then you have your permit bucket, where certain things need to occur to get a permit. And these fit in the workflow. Again, I'll touch on that a little bit as well. But you've essentially got to make sure you get a project in there and define some locations, get your clearances, resolve your conflicts, issue your permit, and close the project. And pretty typical admin tools such as manage users, manage organizations. The system is set up, the organization, so it can be your utilities, your private utilities, your Comcast, Pecos, your Verizons, or your entities in the streets department. Its own organization, and they're given kind of the reins to add and manage their users themselves. So again, it's moving away from the city doing a lot of the management to letting the specific organizations in the system manage the system settings and users themselves to a certain level. So the general workflow, and I'm going to show you kind of a brief demo at the end here to give you a better sense, because I don't think PowerPoint really tells the whole story. Components here. There's a project entry workflow that essentially gets you to a dashboard where it allows you to kind of edit and track project information. So this is that first step into the system, so it can start to look at locations and the project dates down here and get a sense for if there's any conflicts, who needs to be notified that you're trying to do this work, and it kind of steps the project through the different phases: the design phase, the permit phase, construction phase, and this project phase. So getting that project into the system and kind of tracking it through progression. Monitoring those project details and updating those as the project progresses. At some point, if you're excavating, you need to get your one-call ticket. So that one-call ticket number and the physical ticket needs to get attached to this individual project record at some point for each location within the project. And here are some other tabs depending on the phase we're in, sets, kind of fees, project documents, and utility clearance. I'll show you these applications will give you a little bit better sense for what they mean. In conflict several times. As this project workflow, the system does prompt when potential conflict with someone else trying to do work within the right of way. So you have to go in for each location and see who's conflicting and put together to address these conflicts. Now, the system is set up. We give the owner all these at their fingertips to contact the person that they're in conflict with, work out a solution, and then physically enter that resolution into the system. And when you do it with the solution, it kind of clears that conflict out of the system, and that's one step closer to self-service permit issuance for this particular project. Again, this is just another step along the workflow. You apply all the potential impacted utilities, and by default, city agencies want to know about the work. But essentially, from your one-call ticket, you select the impacted utilities. They all have to approve the work within their right-of-way before a permit will be allowed to be issued as well. If you're not necessarily the utility trying to complete the project, but you're someone that's been requested clearance, you've got to look at this project and okay the work. And there's a flow and interface for doing that. You can digital plans, you can see all the specific comments, you can look at the project, and then you can give it kind of an approve or deny or request more information and help move it along through its workflow. On here, a lot of back and forth. Some of it's outside the system, some of it's inside the system. When you get to what you want to do here is the ability to issue a permit for a particular project, which is service, and again, I'll show you that a little bit. A demo version of the application after I go through these PowerPoint slides here. But again, the end goal here is to give them reflects, obtain utility clearance requests, approvals, permit. And it could take, depending on how quickly that the process needs or the permit's needed, it can be done relatively quickly. Just depends on, the ability to contact the individuals and how responsive they are and so on and so forth. I did want to touch on, before I go the actual application a little bit, what the actual role of GIS in the application. Since this is MAGTUG, we're talking about Geospatial. So I want to just had a couple slides together just to highlight some of that, show you some of this in the actual application, but I think this is worthwhile to talk through for a minute or two. So, GIS server is kind of provide services. That's the mapping piece inside here. And the other piece is the road center lines and intersections, because every location is equal to a road segment or intersection. And a location could have multiple segments, multiple intersections, but there are the features, GIS features, that store locations for all projects. Again, one project could have one location, it could have 20 locations. And there are additional feature classes that were brought in for some spatial intersections, such as the district boundaries and some other admin boundaries, because they auto-populate applications are added to the individual project. Intersections are performed using a geometry service set up to run inside the application, and mark objects indexing to help really speed it up, because these projects, especially some of the internal projects in Philadelphia, have over 1,000 locations because they're annual paving projects. So we need to make sure that in our console windows, in our project mapping windows, that they rendered at a reasonable speed for the end user. So we certainly took advantage of indexing to help do that. Interface, again, I'll show this to you, and it's pretty standard. There's some things that are a little bit more GPIS focused, obviously, but you have your standard identification tools, your pan tools, your zooming in and out tools, selection of areas for searches, switching base maps, legends, stuff that a lot of the GIS community is pretty familiar with. In the actual interactive map that's used for searching and for defining project locations. This project search, again, there's some select that you can on the map, and then maybe refine that selection using some attributes in the drop down in a particular form. But again, this is using a lot of the same tools that everyone is used to using that's an ESI user. We have the ability to select locations for your project using the mapping interface or form. Mapping interface uses that same toolbox that I mentioned in the previous slide to determine the strip the project is on and the from and to locations, or if it's an intersection, define the actual intersection or intersections associated with that particular project. Contaction, this is a pretty big one. What's behind the scene when a user selects a location for a project is, before it's saved to the database, there's a detection process, which essentially looks for any project in the system within a certain range of dates of the construction dates for the location, and returns them as potential conflicts. And this doesn't prohibit the user from entering location, but at least gives them a heads up that in this case there might be 8 conflicts that they're going to have to resolve before they're going to be able to get a permit for this particular location. And we mean that they work together with the active side or the range of construction dates, whatever it may mean. This is kind of that prompt into what's going on there. On the resolution side, there's a map here that really gives them an idea of where they're in conflict with a particular project. You'll see location, but basically the red here is where the conflict is, and the project they're in conflict with, but the red is the actual conflict. So in this case, that red symbolizes that they're trying to work on that intersection at the same time, so that needs to be resolved. A piece of part of the mapping interface came into play. And then after that, you can always look at the static map with inside the project as it progresses through the dashboard to see what's where the locations are relative to the city. The piece is the recurring event. We use the same location interface that we use in a project. Essentially, this is things like Broad Street Run, things that are on an annual basis, things that are protected, such as historic streets, of course, to be mapped in the city, and these have to be assigned so the conflict detection can run against those as well. So they're not necessarily excavation projects, but there are other events or ones that might be in a conflict because of the dates and the location, or because really you're not supposed to do anything on that street in some occasions. And the city tracks these using recurrent event management piece of the system. That's the slides. I certainly didn't want to spend too much time on slides. I want to spend a little bit more time, next 10 minutes, just walking through the application, just to give you a sense for how it works. So, just as kind of a note here, in the time allotted here, you're not going to complete, but I'll take you through some of the key pieces here, and try to get a sense for how it works, what the back and forth is like, and what the interface is like inside GPIS. So I'm logging in here as my own organization, and just go around a bit, and then how some workflows work. Thank you. Give it a minute. As we're logging on here, this is our key staging server. I certainly didn't want to log on to the city's environment and the demo environment. So I did it in our internal environment. So a lot of the information you see here is not real. It's a replica of real data, but it's not the actual real GPIS database. Let me just try this again here. Almost here. All right. Okay. Zoom out here just so everyone can see. All right. That pretty much looks like this. You log into GPIS, you can see the different things here. I mentioned in the beginning, the ability to manage your organization by yourself. So once you're set up within the system, there's a little interface here to manage your organization and actually add your own users to the system as needed. If you're, well, an org admin, right, an organizational admin, you can go through and add users and edit their individual permissions. So I'll just show you the same permissions I set up for myself here. So this stuff's pretty self-explanatory. They're here with regards to who can see utility clearance requests. I'm not going to go into detail there. What I want to quickly show you is the ability to kind of individually toggle permissions off. This is a thing that, as we talked with the city and went to set this up, we found out it was pretty important that there's certain permissions that they wanted to have some people and some people are not. So there's a level of individual permissions based on role that can be managed. That's just one example of the administration of the system. Project is exactly what it sounds. I'll show you that in a minute when I actually go through a real workflow. Conflicts dashboard that a user would go in to resolve any individual conflicts that they might have. So in case I have one conflict, if I can see who I'm in conflict with, it shows the map here, right? My conflicting project, the conflict is red, which essentially is the entire length of the project. So this is basically not more than an intersection, it's both sections and the street segment are in conflict. And information about that conflicting project down here. You can see it on the map. I resolve it. I can view some information about it. Contact if I want to resolve it. Their construction dates and so on and so forth. project permit status is really where I can see the status of any permits that I have or awaiting approval from individuals. This particular one has the permit available, so everything's been resolved. This particular project is a test project, but I have it set up here to show you how I get the status of my clearance request and my conflicts, right? These are still all, you can see here, the approval status for all my clearance requests and my open conflicts. I'll show you that when I'm going through the actual workflow. To see if anyone had requested clearance of me because they're working over where my lines are. And product is exactly what it sounds like. This searches the system for either my project or any projects that, and I'll show you that in a second here when this search comes up. So this mapping interface I was talking about, going through the slides, you can interactive tools, lens tool, it's pretty straightforward. You can certainly turn the ticks on and off as needed. By default, they're off because really the user is just looking at the roads, which is the main purpose for, or the main source of locations for Project City. The map tool, you want to change from different types of map in the system. These are base maps that the city wanted in there. And this comes into play with the recost and the cost of a permit are tied to how much street might be ripped up. So this gives the user a quick sense of the potential area of impact. Now, obviously, everything else is an entire street. This is the impact they would have. So that user quick sense if they want to play around here and look at that. And here's your standard map zoom in tools, your pan tool, your identify tool. Allows them to click on a particular road and find out what might be going on there. We don't, by default, we don't display all because it would be kind of see in the UI, but this allows the, so if you mark the street, you can see some projects going on here. You can name the last time it was resurfaced by the city, which is important because there's fees associated with ripping open a street that was just repaved within a certain time frame. So the important information to have at your fingertips to know that this last time this street was resurfaced was, September 2014. There's different projects here. Permitted, which are no permit required, which are typically internal city projects. There's a real sense for what's going on as they to perhaps put a project in or do work down the road in the city. It's kind of an initial planning tool that they can use. They have to go off and see some specific things they want to see a barrier, if you will. So you can start to use these interactive map tools, select all these streets and search for projects. Now in this case, I say, well, I'm going to see all the projects here, not just mine, and run the query, and now it returns these two projects that are going on within those streets I selected. They're all in the system. Now I didn't get any time range, they could be for any time, but it just gives you the tools to find things within the system and to see what's going on. Reports are exactly what it sounds like. I'm not going to go into that too much here. It's some canned reports you can run on you as an utility. You have conflicts, outstanding utility clearance requests, how many permits you have, how many are active, things of that nature. Then we have a quick link to the permit regulations within the city. So I think that's an overview. I think the last thing I wanted to do here was spend some time through the workflow. A sense for how the system, how to get into the system, how the mapping piece is used, how locations are critical. And I'll jump around a little bit in the process because it's not a process you complete in 40 minutes, but it should give you a sense. So you come in, you give your product a default name. These projects, these are all the different types of that can happen within the city right away. You want to prompt you and give you an estimated linear feet. And as soon as you do that, your next screen is where you start to put in your estimated date. Planning phase is going to be complete. And your estimated date is this point. That's really an actual. It's the start date of the planning phase. It starts the day you enter this project in there. And then you go in and enter your estimated dates for each phase of the project. Process. Constraints, these are what drive the conflicts that we're going to detect when we start to pick our locations. This is tested with a couple month duration for construction. So again, simple taker, it's determine who's going to do it, the project contacts, for myself for this particular case, I'm in there. Contacts, enter my dates. Phase approach, but continue to the next screen, which is really the key here, is where I'm starting to get my locations into the system. There's two ways to enter location. There's the creation form. Your non-GIS folks, or folks who know exactly where that project is, don't need to go searching on a map, so they can say, market, right? You starting Market Street, and then I'm from North First to, let's just say, South Street. I select streets, it zooms in, and now I can see, I can confirm based on the visual where I think this target, or this target location for this particular project is. So you can see the potential impacted area, ability to enter any comments about the location, whatever they may be, and then the option to add this or add another location. So I'm going to add this in a location. What's going to happen here, doing that, the space detection and the detection, to see if I have any complex potential with the project location to enter here. And the Market Street's probably pretty heavy in projects, so the detection may take a couple seconds, but you'll see here it returned all the impacts here. And again, when the screen, it's not necessarily saying I can't enter this location. It's just basically telling me that if I do, I'm going to have contact with all these particular projects right here. So I drew and highlight each one. You can see where that project again is versus mine, right? So for this upgrade here, there's a conflict just at this one intersection at the end of my location. So it might turn out that I have a location, but maybe I'm not actually doing something in that intersection. So that's an easy one to resolve. And the mapping interface just allows you to scroll through these. You can see them high on the map as you scroll through each one. Conflict location. So again, I can edit it and say, well, at that location, in most cases, that's not what happens, because you do work, you got to do work. So save it, and that location associated with your project, and have some conflicts to resolve at that point. And then I go through and add another location. Let's just say location, and they don't have to be connected or close by. Each location is union way. It's connected. We're not allowing multi-part locations. So if you have streets aren't connected, it's a new location. And I'll go and save and close this. And again, it'll go through that conflict detection process. Like that. In case I have one conflict with this location, and I'll accept it. Now two locations associated with my project. Either one, right? And I'll take and negotiate with them. So now I'm here and finish my workflow and finish and save the project. It's going to take you to that dashboard, and this is that whole process I was talking about in the beginning, of getting project into the system. So now start your progression, taking it through each one of the phases here. And again, I'm going to walk you through each phase here, but you can just see here you have different tabs that progress through the different phases and have different information about them. Okay, the councils, the police districts, the highway districts, the traffic districts, those two locations I showed are a part of. Now you get a project into the system. The next key piece, aside from keeping this updated as you progress through the phases, then I'll head to another project I have set up for this demo, is to go into the conflict resolution. So if I look at a project I put in for this webinar, you can see that this particular project, which is a line excavation, is what I called it, has a conflict rating and it has one utility request that you approve. So the purpose of showing you how this works in the system, let's get and resolve this conflict with the project. So you can see this conflict, the conflict with the G, who has a project on the same exact street. Let's say for the sake of demo that I've called up the contact person and we've decided that we'll both, when we cut up the street, we'll both get at our line. It sets up that we can both do that. What you need to do then is go and put one in there. So there's some canned resolutions here that we've agreed with the city. Basically just says that talk and you work that agreement. So let's just say that we organize collaboration. So we will work on dates, rip open the street on the same dates, and we'll work together. So our resolution, now I can see that I've responded to this one. Now it hasn't cleared yet because I need the person on the other side to do the exact same thing. So I'm going to lay out now and pretend I'm coming in as the other needs to resolve this conflict. So it's a workflow they can get in. This particular project, in the word I would have been talking to the owner, the other owner, so I know my property that's impacted. I can directly for that. This is that I'm doing for the demo, and you can see now this is the other side, and they can see that I've responded, but they have not responded yet. So this happens here. The other side goes in and enters a resolution which has to match my resolution, and applies to the streets and to the system internally that we've talked. And when I write, you can see the conflict disappears from my queue. So that conflict is now gone. We write in the system. Obviously, we resolved it outside the system, then we came in the system and entered a solution which clears it out. A little bit of jumping back and forth here, but I think it's worthwhile just to show you here. That comes out. So I'm one step closer to be able to issue my permit. So what's in here is utility clearance, and the right-of-way group has to do the final approval because all these other groups have approved me working at that particular city. So here, who is associated as the main contact here, needs to log in and approve my request, and she's notified via email that she has to do that. And the emails that come through the system. If you log in on her end, you'll see your queue, and you can see a ton of utility clearance requests. Some of these are old. Again, this is test data. Towards, you can see this request that she's been notified is waiting for approval. More straightforward. You can come and you can do things like look at kind of attached drawings. You can have the project. You can view the comments from all the other groups. That's comments, but you can see what happens here as individuals are commenting. We're restoring those comments. Your own comments to it. And approve it. And it has cleared from her queue, but more importantly, it's now going to free up my ability to to issue the permit. I'll show you that here in a second. So you can see the permit button has become available. And if I click to enter my, now in this permit, I need to enter my estimated start construction date and my end construction date. And now it's going to pop the tab and permit. And this open here relatively quickly, if not, we'll. That's just opening up the permit document. On our staging server, the speed is not the same as it is in production. I'll do one other thing here while that's opening up. How to have recurring events and how that workflow works. Go back and show you that permit. There we go. So, Peterson was the recurrence in the city, and these are that. Coordinating work you need to be conscious of, and sometimes you'll have conflicts with events that you need to resolve with the city. So if we like the Philadelphia Marathon, you can have it's different play. There's certain, it just doesn't have the level of attribution needs to be provided as it does the project, but at the same time, you have and you've got conflicts that are associated with that particular event. So on basis, things like the Broad Street Run probably change, but users can go through and manage these events. So you can see this particular, the run here has got 37 different locations that it impacts in the city. Standard workflow, or a pretty simple workflow, but I think, again, it manages those events within the city. It works. Go back to that. There's an example of the permit here, and then we can wrap this. So here I just ran. Again, this what we did is it's that self-service permit issuance. It'll template provided by the city. All the information from that particular project auto-populates. You in here in a minute. And it's placed into the permit template, so the utility can use it to have it on site now. For them to use when they're on site there. Seconds, and then we're just going to go to questions. For some reason, this is hanging up. Context, I think there's about, I think it's around 2,000 permits a year are pushed through the system, and if, you know, it's been live since last February, and that's probably how many are in there now that they can go in and access at any time. Once you get access to the permit, see the history of the project, and just track how things are progressing. So I think that this is hung up for now, so I think we're just going to move on. And I believe I had the show. So if there's any questions I can answer. I realize that was kind of choppy. It's not in workflow to show in 45 minutes because there's so much back and forth. So you gave you a sense for how it worked, and you can certainly questions now, or we can talk if you have additional questions.
So take a few minutes and type in your questions. Who is hosting the application and the data? Is this the City of Philadelphia? Is this an interface to the City of Philadelphia system, or are you hosting it?
So this site that we're now is hosting in the cloud, which is why it's a little slow. But the full live system is by City of the OIT, and it's managed by the Streets Group. So they're hosting data. We're just helping them under a maintenance contract, maintain it and upgrade it and enhance it as go forward.
Okay. It seems like the sort of the crux of the mapping application seems to be obviously the road lines, but even more importantly the intersections, having a database of where all those intersections are.
It's two feature classes. So you have a separate feature class for the center lines,
right,
and a separate feature class for the whole intersections themselves. The type of work, you know, a project location can consist of just the street segment. It can consist of each segment and intersection. It can just be the intersection. So there has flexibility in the locations there.
Oh, okay. It does filter through a different the possibility of comparing both.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
We're running conflicts against both intersections and street segments.
Okay. Where are these data sets, I think, existing or developed in this project? Did GP do that, or is that something that Philadelphia did?
So the center lines are the City of Philadelphia. The intersections are the City of Philadelphia. Pretty much all the base map data and the data used to pick locations are all from the City of Philadelphia's data.
Okay.
The only data we're generating are the project locations.
All right. But that is something that is being upped by the system or generated by the system is one of those locations.
Right. The locations are stored inside the database.
Okay.
System database.
That's about 2/3 of the way through Mercer County, so I understand how long it takes. Nothing like the City of Philadelphia. So, any questions from our audience?
So while we're waiting for anyone to come in, here's the actual permit template. It's finally opened up, right? It always goes slower in a demo, but so it's the template the street provided. Again, this is not about permits, but it auto-populates all that information that put in and we're tracking throughout the permit. And it comes out any of the reviewers might have put on there, and then your standard permit language. So.
One more question. Was it a network database with elevation info?
Not a network database. It is not. No, I don't think there's any elevation info. At least we're not using elevation information. I can't say there's not any in there, but it was a database. A feature class for signs and a feature class for intersections.
Well, we're getting thumbs up from the audience. That was a great presentation after the clarification of the muffling. I think we did very great, very well. I think it was clear, even though there was hopping back and forth. If anybody has any more questions, we can stay online for a few minutes. And if not, this webinar will be posted to the website, and you can always contact Bob Pliszka through the website. He happens to be a steering committee member, so very easy to get a hold of him.
Yeah, and I certainly recognize it's the workflow and it's not a demo, but I think hopefully I gave there enough context there on how it generally works.
So with that, you get another thanks, and let's just wrap up here. Also, I want to thank you very much, Bob Pliszka, for being our presenter, and again, JMT Technology Group for sponsoring this webinar today for MAGTUG. I hope everyone enjoyed it. Obviously, we've gotten some thumbs up, so that's great. And please join us on March 28th for our next webinar, which will be New Jersey Transit's Trailblazer Sign Inventory and Management, being presented by Dave, Director of the Geospatial Services for Greenman and Patterson, Inc. Registration is open now for that and available on the magtug.wordpress.com website. I'll just wrap up by saying, until then, happy mapping, everyone.
Thank you.